Hi, this week I finished my run of the films by Otto Waalkes based on his bumpkin Otto character. Otto, der Katastrofenfilm, the catastrophe film or the disaster film, is the fifth and final film in the series and was released in 2000. It's the story of Otto, now again a bumpkin who's been raised by a man who adopted him, who he calls his grandfather, who claims to have been the captain of the Queen Henry, a famous transatlantic cruise liner. When his grandfather dies, he discovers that in fact he hadn't been captain at all, so he's determined to fulfill his father's dream and voyage across the Atlantic on the ship. Meanwhile, a consortium of insurance companies is planning on sinking the ship and preventing a payout from being organised. Or no, it's the owners of the ship are going to sink the ship and get a huge insurance payout and hire a terrorist to carry out the deed whilst an agent is there to provide cover and deniability should an attempt be made on the ship. So Otto gets involved with this. He's mistaken for the terrorist. He falls in love with the insurance agent, who in turn falls in love with him, and it's all very exciting. It's an improvement in plot terms. It's deliberately doing a change. The film starts with Otto in the big city, but the plot is about him getting there because most of the film is narrated by him sitting on a bench in Central Park, which is obviously not filmed there. The film also has a much more dynamic, stylized visual sense. We have a new director and a very different visual tone. So there's much more use of filters, much more use of flashbacks and jumping around. It's a very fresh, kinetic look. It's like they've brought in Luc Besson to direct the movie. And the result is something that feels much more energized, much more cinematic. And it really gives the whole thing a bigger boost. Giving it an overall plot thread, I think, works a lot better because the problem with the previous film, Der Liebesfilm, was that the central plot thread was so weak. I did like that the whole romance part was brought to the front, so Otto and the female character fall in love at the start, and then it's about the obstacles to their relationship. But it meant that the plot was kind of disjointed and didn't have a proper target point. This does, by just openly ripping off Titanic. But most of the jokes are good. The pop cultural stuff is confined to it being a knockoff of Titanic. The relationship Otto has with Sonia, the insurance agent, is actually quite believable, and they do have a really good on-screen chemistry. And in fact, Waalkes and Eva Hassmann, who plays Sonia, wound up being married for over a decade after the film came out. So it's a strong way to end the series. I think after this, Waalkes realised that the Otto character had kind of run its course now. He was in his 50s, and it was time to rethink what he would do with his screen career. And the result was doing a version of Snow White with himself as the leader of all the dwarves. That proved to be successful, and he's gone on to several successful, more fantastical films since then, including a German film version of the British TV series Catweasel, which aired in the UK in 1970 about a wizard accidentally projected forward in time 1,000 years to a present-day farm and getting involved in all kinds of entertaining antics. The series was apparently dubbed into German and was hugely successful over there, and now, decades later, we have a big-budget German-language film based on a series from the creator of Robin of Sherwood. Overall, I enjoyed the series. I mean, the first two movies I'd seen when I was very young, and it was a pleasure to watch them again and also to do a bit of background research and find out how a lot of the jokes are riffing on German popular culture that I wasn't aware of. The third film, Der Außerfriesische, I think works well as being something slightly different, in having a different visual style and a huge budget boost where they can actually film in the US for the first time. The fourth film was an attempt at doing something different. It didn't quite work, but it gets marks for trying. And the fifth film, I think, goes back to slightly more traditional storytelling, but with a twist, not relying too much on the bumpkin goes to the big city plot, but doing something a bit different. riffing on other elements of pop culture and spoofs to find a new story path, and also, as I say, being much more visually exciting, much more stylish, rather than the kind of flat televisual direction you had in the earlier films, which was compensated for by the strength of the material and the performances. Here we have something that matches that. As I say, the big problem with these movies is they've never been translated into English. So the versions that I was watching are in German, and I had the German subtitles on as a helping hand to get through some of the more fast-paced rat-a-tat dialogue. If you speak German, then you're probably well aware of these movies already, and you might well have seen them. And if you're learning German, these probably aren't a great place to start, because a lot of it's based on wordplay and very fast dialogue, which is hard for the novice speaker to comprehend. Is it worth learning German just to watch the movies? Probably not. You'll probably find there are more better uses of language than just doing so that you can understand a few films. But having said that, I really wish they would be translated into English, or at least other languages, so that the films could be seen more internationally. I really enjoyed them overall. I think Otto Waalkes is a great comedian, a great comic performer, and it's a shame that his work is basically unknown outside the German-speaking world. Hopefully this is something that might change in the near future.